Hello, my name is Striker Utasa. I do a lot of work on Risk Rain 2 with my community, and we do a lot of math. Like we do a lot of math, spreadsheets, stuff like that. And Woolie created a video called "Attack Speed is Broken Literally," and we're going to be going through it and trying to figure out like what he got right, what he got wrong, what did we get right, what did we get wrong, etc. There's a few I don't knows in this video that we actually have answers for, which is pretty exciting. Full disclosure, I recorded an entire me and Charlie recorded an entire reaction video to this that was like 45 minutes long. Was corrupted, which is really annoying. But I also got kind of upset in that video, so it's whatever. Like maybe it was for the best. And you'll see why I got upset while we're watching the video. But I have Charlie here with me, as always. Go ahead and say hi.
Yep, I'm here. So I guess this time around, maybe you already know where I stopped you before, so we can just go through and you can pause it when you think it's a time to talk about.
Yeah, hopefully it'll be a lot shorter this time. But like, God, I thought file corrupting was so annoying. I have to watch a Woolie video twice. Like, come on, man.
Deja vu.
I already didn't want to watch it once. All right, let's go again.
Attack speed is weird. I noticed something was up when I hopped on the wiki to confirm Commando's attack rates for the video idea that I had.
I love how he uses the wiki
for his primary attack and a base of 6 shots for his
people
special.
that know what they're talking about.
I thought, just as I remembered. However, wanting to be as precise as possible, I then looked for additional info on suppressive fire's scaling aside from just fires more shots with more attack speed. You don't say. So I took a quick glance into the chipset section, and while I didn't find exactly what I was looking for, I instead found something much more interesting. Suppressive fire can be used to briefly gain a burst of procs, but it should be noted, as double tap always has a faster fire rate, it is more effective to constantly fire double tap for procs instead, as double tap always has a faster fire rate.
This is both true and not true. There was a in the patch notes itself, they talked about a 6.66% shots per second, which is not entirely true. And the lab Discord should have done more research on this. They should have. We should have double checked that, because it's correct in the game's code, but how attack speed works and how that kind of thing works, it's different. So we should have, instead of believing Hopu like immediately, we should have just actually checked this kind of stuff to make sure it was correct. But on paper, if it did actually fire at 6.66 instead of 6.1, because how that delay works, this would be correct. Which again, it's so like minusculely different, which you'll see in a bit. We'll talk about that because of the suppressive fire delay, that it doesn't really matter here. Like it's not as big as a difference as he keeps saying, as he says it is.
That's all I said to myself. I've played a lot.
Go ahead, sorry.
The other thing is that suppressive technically does fire faster, but the problem is there's a minimum duration on it. So while it fires faster for like the first half of the ability, it then ends up waiting for a while, which overall ends up slower, right? Like if you fire 7 shots in 1 second versus firing 6 shots in half a second and then doing nothing for half a second. So that's where that tip came from, is that the end lag is cancelable, but most of the time when people are using it, the overall like average of shots per second will be lower.
Yeah.
Lot of Commando, like a lot of Commando, and without a doubt suppressive fire sure feels like it's firing more shots off than the primary when I'm in the game, but
God, I hate these edits so much.
So it must just be a feeling. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I give you the numbers.
The math.
Before I get into it, I'm purely
the thing that he
showcasing
hates.
attack rate in this video and not overall proc efficiency. So things such as survivor level, damage values, and proc coefficient are entirely irrelevant. I am only concerned about how fast the hits are pumping. All the footage you're about to see was tested as follows. Using some mods, I went to the Lunar Scab stage and bumped the in-game time and stage count to absurdly high amounts.
Can I talk about how proud I am that Woolie's actually using the debug toolkit? Like, I'm very happy that he's actually testing things. Now, there are certain things that don't really need to be tested because me, Wither, Charlie, Plasma, Europe, etc., have all done it before, and like it's been tested many times. So he kind of wasted his time a lot here, especially since he'd even come to a conclusion on some of this. So it's like you could have just asked us for that kind of stuff, but I am happy that he is actually testing these things. This is the vast improvement than how he tested Crowdfunder, apparently, which was just giving him a Crowdfunder at the very start of the run. Like, that's not how you test things.
To ensure that I had the chunkiest cute little target dummy as possible. Then I capped my bleed and attacked for 10 seconds straight, or in the case of Suppressive Fire, just, fired it. This was the...
I want to talk about the test dummy here, because we talked about that in the reaction. This is not the most optimal test dummy by a lot. It has an AI, it is constantly shooting at you, you have to put on the God mode code. You also, like... It's also very distracting, like him shooting at you, placing sticky bombs on you, and just, like, this... What you do is you spawn in a Lunar Golem Chimera with the Celestine Affix on it. That'll give you the highest HP enemy that does not have armor, so you don't have to calculate armor in all of your math. You can just look at the numbers, which is really nice. And you can also summon him with the debug toolkit. You can summon him with no AI, so he's just standing completely still. I call him Carl. I plan to make an introductory video to Carl at some point. I've just been on a weird break from content, but this has brought me back, good lord. So yeah, like this, just use that next time, Woolie, if you're watching this. It's spawn_AI lunar G space 181. That's all you do.
Easiest way to determine how many shots have been fired in a specific time frame, as a new stack of bleed was applied every time an attack hit. All that was left was to take the footage into editing, line up the initial bleed frame perfectly, jump to the 10-second mark, and then see the total number of bleeds after exactly 10 seconds. By then dividing that stack count by 10, we now have the stacks applied per second, which again is the same thing as shots per second in this case. And voila, a frame perfect representation of attack speed and Risk of Rain 2, or basically frame perfect. I record at 60 FPS.
I'm so mad I have to watch this again.
Slightly higher than that, so the numbers here.
So Charlie, you said the game's tick rate was 60, right? Exactly.
Yep. Unity's default is 50. So I think Plasma actually, we ended up testing this very recently and did confirm the suspect that the game does just run at 60 hertz.
You can't say that word. Sorry. You can't say suspect here.
Oh, I can't. Our suspicion.
Suspicion.
Especially at the start, maybe a tiny bit off, but it really does not change anything. Also, the discrepancies you're about to see, let me assure you, are not explained by this potential frame gap. Starting here with the default attack speed. After 10 seconds of firing, Commando applied 61 stacks of bleed with his primary, equaling 6.1 shots per second. Remember that the wiki claimed 6 shots per second by default, so hey, that's close enough for me. And before you type, it actually hit 61 stacks a frame before the 10-second mark, so it's definitely firing faster.
So this is where we should have definitely tested this, because the patch note said 6.66 repeating, but
well, they said a 0.15 delay.
Yeah.
Down from a 0.2 delay, because attack speed is actually delay divided by attack speed. Yeah. So yeah. But that's where we got the 6.6 from.
Hopu was right, but also not at the same time. Like, it was just it was weird, and we should have tested it. We should have made absolutely sure. This is where we were wrong. This is the moment where we were wrong.
Yep.
Within 6. For Suppressive Fire, 6 stacks of bleed were applied in 35 frames, or 0.583 seconds. This is equal to 10.
So I want you all to notice something real quick. I want you to notice this
frames,
right
or
here.
0.58.
Do you see how Commando has to go from, like, he has to, like, move his arm back, and, like, he has to stop the delay of it?
3 seconds.
You cannot shoot during you cannot shoot during that. And that's where this whole math thing is wrong, because your shots per second are different because you cannot immediately start shooting M1 afterwards.
Correct. And this is where we already were aware that Suppressive does fire faster. This is why it felt like it was faster to him, I'm sure, because while it is shooting, it is faster. It's just got that delay on it.
Yeah, it's got that delay, and you can cancel it with the M2, which you're having perfect ability rotation, and you can do that. But then the M2 also has a delay afterwards.
Yeah. Well, and there's this issue that, like, that's not practical at a range, which most people want to use suppressive fire. The number one time that I see it is for shooting wisps or for shooting things at a range to avoid the M1 bloom. And in those cases, you're not wanting to cancel M2 because using phase blast from a million miles away, because that has an end lag as well. So you're just blowing phase blast into the wind and doing nothing. So I mean, you're not going to cancel it in those cases.
Yeah, like, I mean, you could use phase round, but why would you use phase round when phase blast is just insane? So, like, his math is right, but he's not accounting for the delay at all.
Yeah,
and also if you're using it in close range and where phase blast is actually relevant, then why don't you just use nades? You throw
Yeah.
nades, like I think you said 0.5 seconds the last recording.
Nades have they have a half-second animation, and that scales with attack speed, which means even more uptime on M1.
Yeah, so like you can just use nades, get that I believe 700% damage out of it if you're actually good with them.
Yeah, before we had done a lot of testing with suppressive fire versus nades. This is why we missed the M1, but suppressive fire we've got pretty down pat because we've done a lot of comparison even before the M1 buff, and it always comes out that nades are just better because they give you more time to shoot your M1, and they're a huge burst of damage in an AoE. So as long as you're able to hit them like even only occasionally, it's usually just better.
Yeah, and the cool thing about nades is that like you can they help your early game out tremendously. Like Commando kind of struggles with AoE, and nades have that in spades. Like in spades, nades are amazing for AoE. Nades are my favorite ability in the game, by the way. I love how they feel. I love the cool like trick shots you can do with bouncing on them. I love how you can get them stuck in enemies. Like it's just so fun. So I am slightly biased here, but nades are very, very impactful on the first 3 stages of a run. But after stage 3, you just take Ruin. Like, Ruin's a debuff for Deathmark. It has an insane ban proc. It's like... Ruin is really, really good on Mando. So even with this new information, you're only really taking Suppressive Fire for the first 3 stages. So,
right. Well, and because of that end lag, it actually starts out at 6 shots per second versus M1 6.1 shots per second. So it still starts out worse.
Yeah, it still starts out worse. Like, yeah, it scales better with attack speed, but... Like...
Yeah,
really
being
matter.
marginally better, I think, isn't enough. I kind of, even knowing what we have, that it's not always strictly worse, that's good, but it's on a 9-second cooldown. I feel like it should be
it's
not
9
just
seconds.
marginally better with a ridiculous amount of attack speed.
That doesn't make sense.
10.29 shots per second. That's the 6 stacks divided by 0.583 seconds. That's already 68% faster than double.
Again, this is wrong because of the delay.
Yep. It would be 6 divided by 1.
Let's go ahead and start adding some attack speed. I will only be using syringes for the time being, as all increases to attack speed are additive except for one. Ooh, foreshadowing. Ooh. Each syringe grants 15% increased attack speed. So with 5 syringes, we are at 75% increased attack speed, or simply as the Better UI mod tells us, 1.75 attack speed overall. Wait, but Woolie, if you already know exactly what your attack speed is, isn't it just simple multiplication with the baseline values you just told us to then figure out how many shots you'll fire now?
That makes sense to me.
That's what I initially thought, yeah. But as I said at the start of the video, in reality, it truly is weird with...
So we've known about this for forever now. Like, we've known this before, like, since the lab Discord was created. We've known this.
Yeah, this is just how attack speed works. Attack speed has always been delay divided by attack speed. That's the only exception is for, like, suppressive fire shot count is shots times attack speed and delay divided by attack speed. But this is just always how attack speed has worked.
It frustrates me because like you have this resource being the lab Discord and the modding community, but you just don't use it. Like we've known about this for forever, and he is just now figuring this out. He is just now learning this. It's
kind of wild to me that you can go this long without knowing how attack speed works.
It's like you are the biggest Risk of Rain 2 content creator out there, and you have this wonderful community. I love the Risk of Rain 2 community. Risk of Rain 2 community is awesome. I freaking love them. I'm so happy that this is the game that I decided to put all my time into. So why don't you use the resources that you have?
Yep.
Instead of arguing with them on your Discord and sending them a picture of you grabbing your nuts. When you're talking, like... I'm so mad that he did that to Europe. He was like, I'll get your crowdfunder right here, buddy, and then posted that image. It's like, dude, you can't, like, you can't just ignore this resource. If I was this big, and there was a resource that has already done all this math for me, even if I wanted to double check it, I'd still use it. It's still a usable resource.
It gives you a starting point that you don't have to figure it all out from scratch. You can just look at the conclusion and test the conclusion. And if you see a discrepancy, that's where you can start trying to figure out where the discrepancy came from.
Exactly. It's like, it's so annoying because it's like you have this huge resource, this huge important resource that you can use, but you're not using it. It's like trying to write a book report and not using the book. Like,
Yeah.
it's like, well, I'll figure it out myself. I don't need to read the book. It's like,
Without even having the analysis of like being able to look into the code or actually like understand the stuff that's going on.
yeah, like Charlie looks into the code, Plasma looks into the code, Wither, I believe, also looks in the code. Like, we have people that have the game's code right there. If you want to know something, if you have a question, you can ask them, and they will look into the game's code for you.
Yeah, well, in the modding community messes with the game's code. That's how modding works. So like they would know as well. So even if it's like a problem you don't like the lab, like that resource exists to be asked, you know?
Yeah, exactly. We have a channel, like we have a channel just for questions. Like you can, even if you don't like the community, if you don't like the people in there, you can just ask. It's not like your opinion of us changes the information.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you might not trust us, which that's fine. If you don't trust us, that's cool. Especially since we got the M1 thing wrong. Like, we got 9,000 other things right, but we got one thing wrong. That's fine. You can test that. You can double check. But it's still, as Charlie said, it's still a good baseline.
Yeah.
It's
It
like,
takes you a lot of trouble not knowing like how it functions. Because how it functions is not the problem. It's missing pieces, you know? But how it functions is still correct at the end of the day.
it's like, if you want to do a study, like if you want to do a scientific study on something, you will go and see if that study's already been done.
Yeah.
Which like in this case it has. You
Yeah,
go
for
to-
suppressive fire especially, it's all documented.
It's all documented, but he just never used it. Maybe and he's aware of this, by the way. He's not like, oh, didn't know the lab code existed. I invited him to the lab Discord. I explained what it is. I sent him Charlie's big old spreadsheet.
Mm-hmm.
And he responded and said, like, I'm not interested. It's like, that's fine. Like, okay.
5 syringes, double tap fired 86 shots over 10 seconds or 8.6 per second. If we then use the formula just described with 6.1 as the base shots per second
And completely ignored the delay.
1.75, the increased attack speed, gives us 10.68 shots per second on paper. But in the game, we are under the projected 10.68, instead sitting at just 8.6. That's a 24% difference. Okay, let's see what happens with suppressive fire. If we
Because
take
of
the
how
base
attack speed works.
10.29 shots per second
Correct.
and then multiply that by 1.75, we get a projected 18 shots per second. In game, it fired 10 shots in just 0.617 seconds, equaling 16.2 shots per second. That's not
per
too
second,
off,
just
but
grab
it's
it the
still
delay.
not at the projected amount. Wait, what if we just look at the number of shots fired and disregard the rate at which they came out? Okay, suppressive fire shoots a base of 6 shots, so if we multiply that by 1.75, we get a projected 10.5 shots in total. Hold on, how many stacks do we get again? 10. Interesting. Only seeing 10 stacks in the game makes sense because we can't apply half of a stack of bleed, so then it's highly likely that the game is lining up exactly with the projected amount. Turns out it is indeed lining exactly up. With 20 syringes, an attack speed of 4, the projected amount of shots fired is 24, and the game shows exactly 24.
I hate how long he
With 5
takes on
attack
this.
Speed, the projected is 30,
Like-
the game is 30. With 7 attack speed, projected is 42, game is
It goes
42.
on for
10
so
speed,
long.
60 projected,
This is what I was
60
talking
so
about, though.
on
Like, this
and
is
so
just
forth.
how
I
suppressive
tested
fire
this
works.
until a whopping
Yeah.
151 attack speed, 15,000%. And at this speed, the projected amount of shots is 906. And in the game, well, would you look at that? Fun fact, you can make suppressive fire last as long as you would like with enough attack speed, but the stacks it applies per second will never go above 60. This breakpoint of 60 stacks per second is first achieved with an attack speed of 7 and persists for every other higher value. However, the duration of suppressive fire continues to go up with more attack speed. This means you can get infinite uptime on the ability, where by the time the ability is done casting, it is entirely off of cooldown and ready for round 2. The
But this is at an insane level of attack speed that you're never going to reach unless you are in like an insanely long god run. Like,
Yeah,
it's
like
just-
if I remember correctly, somewhere between 530 and like 550 syringes is where Acrid's M1 breaks so bad that you never get anything out past the first swing because it resets another first swing.
and you can do that cool slide tech. Like, it's so fun. But it's like, it just,
Unrealistic size.
this is unrealistic. Like, just
Closest I bothered getting to timing this breakpoint was at an attack speed of 91.9, or just a measly 606 syringes.
Hey, no, this is
just
normal.
The usual
Just
amount
normal
you'll see in
stuff
a
you
run.
get.
This made Suppressifier last 9.15 seconds, and with a cooldown of 9 seconds, made it permanently available. Also, it fired 551 shots, equaling again 60 per second, just in case you didn't believe me the first time. But okay, let's move it way back here. Remember, the initial claim was that double tap always fires faster than Suppressifier. Okay, how does this hold up? When we get to ludicrously high amounts of attack speed with double tap, just like we did with Suppressifier, is it the same breakpoint of 60 shots reached per second? I don't know how else to break it to you, but no, not even close. With 2.5 attack speed, double tap fired 120 shots, or 12 per second. With 4 speed, 151 shots, or 15.1 per second. 10 speed, 201 stacks, or 20.1 per second. 16 speed, also 201 stacks, 20.1 per second. 31 speed, 201 stacks, or 20.1 per second. All right, take this. 76 speed. 201 stacks, 20.1 per second. Gentlemen, I believe we call this an endpoint. No matter what I did, Commando's primary attack never went above
because you
20
can't
shots
fire.
per second, period. You remember that foreshadowing from before?
Go ahead. Nick.
I think this is the part where we bring up the state machine, because that's kind of what we talked about before.
State machine.
This is the part that we were missing in the math. The way that a lot of M1s work is the characters have states, and so when you hold down left click, you're in the idle state. The game says you're holding down left click. Let's enter the attack state, right? So like for Huntress, it's going to be fire an arrow, and after the delay, then it goes back to the idle state. So that means that at your maximum possible fire rate, where shooting only takes a single frame, you're going idle state, you're holding M1, fire the weapon. Idle state, fire the weapon, which means 2 frames, 30 per second maximum. For Commando, there's a leftover bit of code for a reload with a 0-second cooldown, which means when you start getting all the way up to the point where things are happening in 1 frame or less, it starts calling this reload code. So you're actually going idle state, hold M1, go to the fire state, go to a reload state.
Charlie, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but you are peeking your mic so hard.
Oh, am I? I'll go farther away.
You're so excited, but I'm completely fine with it. Like, keep going, please.
I'll come over here. It's louder now. I guess I'm not used to it being so loud. But yeah, so you'll fire the pistol, and then it goes to this unused reload state, which has a cooldown of 0. And then it moves to the idle state and then goes back. So that takes 3 frames, which means that Commando's maximum possible fire rate is 20 per second, because there's only 60 frames and it takes 3 per shot. What's interesting is that this has to just be unused broken code, because you can't have a duration of 0. If you have the console open when this happens, you'll actually see an error about the reload state being mad that there's a duration of 0.
Yeah, exactly. And like you can and you might think of it like this, like shoot, reload, like shoot, reload, stand still, shoot, reload, stand still, shoot, reload. Like that's what is happening here. That's why it's such a weird thing. We didn't know about this, and this is actually why. This is one of the big reasons that he's getting this like suppressive fire is better than M1 thing.
Yeah, well, because we knew about this on other things. The piece we were missing is the reload state, because we knew about this on Huntress, and we know about it for like multi saw or nail gun. Because they don't ever leave the state. Those are a special case where they enter the state, and as long as you're holding down M1, they stay in that state and never exit.
Not Huntress M1, only
multi
and saw.
Yeah, nail gun and saw. So those end up having a maximum of 60 per second. And there's actually some other repercussions as well, because they never exit the state. It never recalls the skill slot, so Red Whip will activate. Red Whip never gets reset.
Red Whip never gets reset. Volcanic Egg never gets reset. Like it just they stay in that state forever until you stop.
You can use it while sprinting. Yeah. So
like, and again, what frustrates me is that we already knew this. You didn't have to do all this testing. Like you can double check us, but you just ask, man. Like just ask.
Right. Because if you had the basis, everything else would have checked out, and all you'd have to do is realize that Commandos is wrong because of that reload state we didn't know about.
And again, like again, we have 9,000 things right. We got one thing wrong. Like that's on us. We got one thing wrong.
Oops.
Like, that's an oops moment for us.
Well, and technically that was just coming from the wiki too. And the wiki, while we try and keep it up to date, we aren't the only ones on the wiki.
Yeah.
I've more than once gone in and been like, what is this? And then test it, and it's just completely factually like junk. It's just not even true at all.
Like people saying stuff like like certain items, like certain interactables can't appear on certain stages or something like that. Like it's just like
Yeah, well, and
just
I think the
wrong.
most recent one I had to do is like brittle crown ignores shield unless you
Like,
have
what?
transcendence, which is just not true. Brittle crown is health plus shield. It always has been. It was never changed, and that's just wrong. I don't know why that got on there. I don't know, but I had to go and remove it. So
Yeah, exactly. All right.
For, yeah, Spinal Tonic's 70% increased attack speed, those are some big old air quotes around that one, is actually 70%
Yeah, it's a
more.
every single buff is
multiplicative with your other
multiplicative
sources,
besides
and
armor.
this is also true for every type of boost the tonic grants.
I hope that he tests accurate regeneration with this, because that was the big thing about that blight video, about that melee accurate video, like Tonic being busted on him. Tonic is so broken on melee accurate, it's actually insane, because that regeneration buff that you get is just that's what it is. It's regeneration, which Tonic increases. So like you get perma uptime Tonic with purity, and you can hug Blazing Elites in the second loop and be fine. Like it's actually gross how insane that health regen is.
Which is why it's so dang powerful. This means
yes,
that whatever
tonic
your
is
attack
busted.
speed is, when you pop the tonic, it is then multiplied by 1.7. This is reflected here easily with the UI mod. I have 60 syringes, which is an increase of 900% or an attack speed of 10, and you can clearly see that the tonic boosts that 10 up to 17. Without the tonic, double tap fired 20 shots per second at an attack speed of 10. And with the tonic, that same 10 attack speed went up to 17,
still 20.1,
but still only fired 20 shots per second. However, and here's where it gets really interesting. If we go all the way back down to an attack speed of just 1, meaning no increase whatsoever, and then pop a tonic, you'd expect that 1 attack speed to go to 1.7, right? Okay, cool. That's exactly what happens in the game. Off to a good start. Remember, at 1 attack speed, Commando fired 6 shots per second. It was actually 6.1, but let's just drop the change here. So with the tonic's 70% increase, you would then expect 10.2 shots per second.
No, because that's how that works.
Weird, didn't I? Now, this 1.7 attack speed with tonic does line up with the 1.7 attack speed without the tonic. Both of those values equate to 86 stacks in 10 seconds or 8.6 per second. But the question is, why is the base value, 6 shots per second, not accurately reflected by increases to attack speed? You'd think that a 70% increase
if yes, you would know!
to a 70% increase in shots
because it's
fired, right?
division plus
I
float
just
frames.
proved that the game does calculate this correctly with specifier, so why doesn't it do that here with double tap? What the heck is going on? To be real with you, I haven't got a single clue. Seriously.
It's the reload animation thing.
Correct.
It's the reload animation.
It's delay divided by attack speed, and then there's the extra frames that are added on that don't get reduced. And also, Warhorn gives 70%, so that would have matched tonic at nothing. And also, attack speed's attack speed, so it doesn't matter where it's coming from. It's all the same stat.
I don't know why he showed like, oh, it's the
Of course, it's the same.
Of course, it's the same.
Yeah,
that would be insane. Could you imagine if it was different? Could you like syringes was its weird like other attack speed increase?
I guess there's some weird jank sometimes in the game, but yeah, no, the attack speed's attack speed.
Yeah,
it's never different. Yeah,
an A press is an A press. You can't say it's only half.
But
it's like you could have asked the modding community. Like Plasma knew about this already. You could ask the modding community, you could have asked us, you could have asked anything, but instead you were just like, I'm just gonna put out a video that has an I don't know in it.
Yeah.
Risk 2 community is awesome. Use it. It's great. I love this community so much. I absolutely love this community. It's hard for me to explain how much they've done for me and how grateful I am to be in it. So it's
I love them.
Just use it.
Seriously, I straight up have no idea what's going on. The next logical step would then be to say, okay, maybe this is an incident isolated to the commando. All right, let's hop on over to 2 other survivors with sustained primary attacks, Huntress and Multi. With an attack speed of 1, Huntress stacks 20 bleeds or 2 per second. With an attack speed of 4, 66 stacks or 6.6 per second. Uh-oh, we're already off track. 8.5 speed, 121 stacks, 12.1 per second. 13 speed, 100.
Huntress doesn't have the leftover code.
2 per second. 27.25 speed, 201 stacks, 20.1 per second. 29.8 speed, also 201 stacks, 20.1 per second. I think we see a trend, but 30.25 speed, 301 stacks, 30.1 per second. And this breakpoint continues for 34.75 speed, 46 speed, and then another whopping.
So you can see that it's like, instead of having 3 frames, shoot, reload, idle, you just have 2. So
Yeah.
it
There's
makes sense that
also
you're going faster here.
something else. Something else that is worth considering is the way that there's some other discrepancies that can arise, like sub-frame stuff. Because the way that the game does it is there's a stopwatch and there's the fixed update, and this is where the timing comes from. So one frame is 1 divided by 60. If you end up with a timer that doesn't exactly align with a frame, then you'll end up with some extra, right? Instead of the full 1 or 0.0166, you might end up with only half of that over the timer. And you can either set the timer to 0, in which case that half a frame is wasted, thrown away. So the next attack will take half a frame longer, or you can subtract the expected duration from, the delta time. And then that half frame, just instead of starting at 0, you start at half a frame and then you count up from there. So it never gets wasted. And different attacks in the game actually do this differently. No one does it the same. So that can lead to extra offsets, especially with attack speed. You can get these really, really weird final times.
So to basically sum up what Charlie just said, Risk of Rain 2 is bad. Just go play Isaac together. Isaac the Gathering, Isaac Afterbirth, or whatever it's called. Whatever that game's called.
I'm looking at it right now, and Huntress's M1 is fire timer minus change in time. So she subtracts and doesn't really waste extra time. Multi's Saw sets it to 0. So if it ever misaligns, it will waste frames.
Yeah, it's like multi just never leaves that state. It never goes back to idle.
Mm-hmm.
So
It's a lot harder to
151 speed. It seems that the Huntress's breakpoint is higher than Commando's, but still a hard cap nonetheless at 30.1. Tonic, again, does not change any of these breakpoints. And for our favorite robot, Multi, 126 stacks,
good lad.
12.6
Best character game even.
with an attack speed of 1, 314 stacks, or 31.4 per second at 2.5 speed. Wait, hold up. Could it be? 2.5 attack speed, multiply the base of 126 stacks by 2.5, and 315. 314, 315. That's good enough for me, baby. So, Multi seems to be working correctly. Risk of Rain 2, what the heck are you doing to me? So let's do some more. 4 attacks.
You would know if you asked.
50.1 per second. Oh gosh, oh geez, it's actually lining up. Take some fractions, silly game. Let's see what happens now. 4.45 attack speed, 558 stacks, 55.8 per second. Oh my gosh, 5.5 attacks.
Yep, and this is the cap.
601 stacks, 60.1 per second.
60 FPS game.
8.5 speed, 601 stacks, 60.1 per second. Dang it. Yeah.
You have a 60 FPS game and you're firing every frame.
Yep, and it's worth noting that this is the backend tick rate. The fixed update never changes. So this is, a lot of people will make this misconception that like the frame rate that you're getting in your game, if it's choppy or something from a lot of like effects going on, it doesn't always change the backend. The backend is always trying to tick at 0.16. So if you've got 400 FPS, that doesn't make the backend run any faster. It's the tick rate is always tied to 60.
Yeah, the back end will always be the same.
Correct.
It turns out that both Hunters and Multi suffer from the same fate as Commando. Obviously, their numbers are different, but the result is the same. Attack speed kind of just does whatever it wants. So what is the
You would
moral
know
of
how it
this
works.
story? If you have a gut feeling, it's probably for a good reason. Mathematical formulas and
I hate this so much. My camera's covering it, but it basically says the game isn't a spreadsheet. Try playing it sometime. We have 2 players in the lab Discord, Crescendo and Europe, who have some of the highest ever. Like, that has been, like, revealed in Risk of Rain 2. Europe, I think, is, like, 2,500 hours, and Crescendo's, like, something insane, like 5K or 6K. Like, something ridiculous. Like, these people play the game a lot and are active in the Discord.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, we have people who have insane amounts of playtime there. We have streamers like Races and Red Beardy in the lab Discord. Like, we have people who know the video game, who play the video game a ton. And
and we're willing to test these things as well, right? Like, if you have a feeling for something, that's part of like how hypotheses are formed, and like that is a big part of going and saying like, oh, this feels wrong, let's go make sure it's true.
Yeah, and that's what he did. That's exactly what he did here. He was like, hey, this seems like it's wrong, I'm gonna go test it, and he did. Now, he could have came to this conclusion way faster if he had just reached out to us or the modding community, but this is a gotcha. This is like what Charlie said in the last recording. This is a gotcha. This is like, oh, you got one thing wrong, buddy. Gotcha. Spreadsheets are bullshit. And yet, this entire video was him making a spreadsheet.
Yeah.
Like, this entire video was him going through the exact same process that we do.
Because collecting the math and putting it on screen is the same as collecting the math and putting it into a spreadsheet. And then you just click and drag your formula and get predicted. And then you compare it to actual and put a percentage on it. That's like literally what all of my spreadsheets do. It's a theory compared to actual.
And it's like, this is an obvious call out to the lab Discord and its members, because Europe has actually been talking to Woolie a lot, which is where the I got your crowdfund right here, buddy thing happened. But it's like, this is an obvious call out to us, which sucks a lot. And like, the games are math. Like, how code works, like how computers work, is math. So saying that the game isn't math when that's what it literally is doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
It's like it's functions, it's if else statements, like it's Boolean, like it's just
Yeah.
it's math. Like, you can't say game not math when game literally made of math.
Yeah, the only catch is just making sure that like you have all the info, and that's what like digging into the code is for, is like getting all the info. Because then once you know how the game is calculating things, you just copy that same math and it just works. You know?
Yeah, exactly. It's like this means nothing. This means absolutely nothing.
Projections don't always reflect reality. Don't blindly trust figures because they simply claim to be authoritative. In other words, do your own research. This would apply to me as well. And
I'm glad he said that, as Charlie said this in the last recording, the corrupted one as well. But there have been many times where we've seen, like, recently there were a few screenshots that were brought to my attention of someone calling me and Charlie dumb, but in a much more mean way, because we disagreed with Woolie. Like, I'm glad he said that, but I don't think it's going to change much. Like, his fans are still going to attack the lab Discord. We're still going to be called stupid because we don't agree with them. Like, thank you, Woolie, if you're watching this, thank you for saying that, but I don't think it's going to stop your fans from attacking us at all.
Yeah, well, and peer review is kind of like a big part of what we want to do, right? We want to have a theory and test it and say like, oh, here's what I found. Share the videos, share the screenshots, share the spreadsheets, and then have someone else take that same thing and do it again, right? And that's what we do a lot. And people ask questions, and we're always more than willing to like change our perspectives. It's not like we have a feeling or a belief and we like hold on to it forever. We're always trying to achieve like the most true position, right? So if something changes, if we find out that something isn't how we thought, then oops, we're going to try and make it better in the future.
Yeah, we're going to make sure that that mistake doesn't happen in the future. Like when those patch notes come out for the DLC one, we are testing everything. It does not matter what they say. We are testing we're not having another mistake like the Commando M1.
Yeah. Check the numbers.
Check the
They
numbers.
lie.
We actually added
lie.
added a new rule to the lab Discord. Where they added a rule that says like never trust Hopu games. It's really funny.
The descriptions are funky. The patch notes aren't always as descriptive as you'd like.
Yeah, it's like the math was right. We just didn't have all the information. That was the big thing. Which I'm glad this video exists. I just wish it wasn't so like.
If it didn't feel like a call out, that's my only problem, is like knowing that something isn't correct and like fixing and improving it is totally fine. I love that. I love growing. But when someone is like using it and being antagonistic and like, you got it wrong, so your spreadsheets, your math, everything that you've worked on can't be trusted. That's where it like starts to feel bad. Like just because one component is incorrect doesn't mean that
you got 9,000 things wrong, but 9,000 things right, but you got one thing wrong. Gotcha. Like that's not how that works, my guy.
I've heard some people use this same thing to discredit like real life modern science. Like, oh, science changed in X past years, and it's like, well, yeah, that doesn't mean you don't trust them moving forward. It just means that they're willing to grow and admit they made a mistake. You know what I mean?
Science used to think the Earth was flat, but now it's round. Let's not trust science anymore. It's like
it's all about refining your positions and getting as close to reality as possible.
Let's finish up the video.
Finally, suppressive fire is at worst 68% better and at best
false because of the delay.
Yep, this is the only claim that I think is just overtly not true, because he didn't account for the delay. So at base, it's 6 versus 6.1. It starts out worse. And then both of them scale, and suppressive fire does in fact scale better with attack speed. So it means that eventually it will get better. But the points that it's starting to get better, it's only marginally better until you're getting like unrealistic amounts of attack speed. And at that point, it's not, I don't know, it's not this number that he's putting on the screen.
It's not. It's not an insane amount better, like he's saying
Correct.
it is. And
It's only like significantly or like even noticeable when you've got a lot of attack speed or you're canceling the end lag in like point blank.
and by then, just get ruined. Like, by then, just get ruined. Stack it up to like 6,000 whatever because your attack speed's so ridiculous that you're having suppressive fire have infinite uptime. Like just if your attack speed's that insane, just get ruined and then like an insane band proc. Like it.
120% per shot instead of just an extra 100.
I'm a commando main. I play this character. He probably has my most playtime by a good amount. I play him all the time on stream, which is linked down below. And I basically choose nades at the start. I go the first 3 stages, and then in stage 4 or 5, like so I basically play through like Rally Point Delta Score Takers, and then after that I get ruin. Either I get it on after stage 2, or I get it after stage 3, depending on how much AoE I have. Like nades are like a band-aid for your AoE problem, and then once you get like a single gasoline or like a will-o-wisp or just anything that really helps your AoE issue, you just get ruin because ruin's like a debuff for death mark. It's really good against like a Allied worship unit. It's really good against bosses. Like it's really really good. Ruin is very very strong, especially on Mando. So you just take that. So the fact that he's saying like suppressive fire is better with this much attack speed, like it doesn't matter because you're just gonna take ruin anyway. That's the optimal play every single time. Is take ruin on stage 3.
Yeah, well, and if you enjoy using suppressive, then that's fine. Like even when we were under the assumption that it was just always infinitely like worse, even then, if you enjoy it, you enjoy it. That's fine. The question is always like, what is optimal, right? Not what feels the best.
If you enjoy playing Arrow Rain Huntress, go for it. But when you say that Arrow Rain is better than Ballista, that's when we have a problem. It's like if you say like, "Hey, I enjoy phase round more than phase blast." That's fine. It's a video game. Have fun. Like enjoy your time with the funny video game. I certainly do.
Strides Loader.
Yeah, I play Strides Loader all the time. Strides Loader is awesome. I love Strides Loader. It's so funny. But I'm not going to sit here and argue with you that Strides Loader is the most optimal way to play Loader. Like that's not no.
Yeah.
It's like just if you want to play Drizzle Swarm Sacrifice Command, go ahead. It's a video game. Have fun. But
yeah, well, and even before the M1 buff, we had already run like the suppressive versus nades, and the extra uptime on the M1 and the AoE and the bigger burst has always had nades like outperforming suppressive. That's just always been the case. Like even if you only hit them occasionally, it's usually enough. And so now that suppressive is only marginally better, it's like, okay, I'm glad it's marginally better, but even when it was always better, it's grenades were still more useful.
Yay, confetti, surprise party. Like cool, it's awesome that suppressive fire is slightly better. But I'm taking nades every single time anyway, because nades are really good AoE and they work really well with bans, they work really well with total damage procs, which are every single proc in the game that's not bleed, by the way. Hobo Games descriptions be damned, but like if I have an ATG missile and it procs off my nade, that's a ton of damage. Whoever procs off of one of the suppressive fire shots, that's like an okay amount of damage.
Yeah.
Like it's and also like what he says next.
3 times better than double tap. Also, frag grenades suck. What do you guys think is going on?
Frag grenades are my favorite ability in the game. They're really fun to use.
I'm remembering. I'm so sad that we will never get back the first time you heard that.
I was so mad. I was so angry. I actually got heated. I actually got really upset because like this is somebody with a huge outreach. Like this guy is so much bigger than every other Risk Frame 2 channel. So when he says nades suck, I know for a fact that players out there are not going to give them a chance because nades are my favorite ability in the game. They're so fun. They're so strong. They're so good. But players just don't give them a chance because players like Woolie say that they're bad. It's like Blight Acrid. Like Blight Melee Acrid is my favorite way to play Acrid by far. And I know players out there are not going to try it. And I know this is the case because I used to be the same with Crowdfunder and Corpse Bloom. My favorite equipment and my favorite Lunar. Like, Crowdfunder is so much fun.
I've already had 2 or 3 people in the main Discord be like, "Ha, I knew it. Grenades sucked all along," and it's like, oh god. No, it's like,
you're robbing yourself of this experience that I personally find super fun and super effective. Like, Crowdfunder is an insane equipment. It's even more insane in looping runs, which is why I'm upset that Woolie doesn't like it. Because if you're so like, you love proc chains, so why are you not taking the thing that's absurdly good with proc chains? You love Meat Hook, you love Clover, so why are you not taking the best equipment for those two?
yeah, yeah,
Like, it doesn't make sense, and Woolie is robbing himself of that really fun experience of having a crowdfunder during a god run because he thinks it's bad, and
yeah. Well,
because of
and
that,
preventing new players from ever trying it because they might hate it,
exactly,
but they might love it. You know.
exactly, you're basically taking this game that has so many cool viable things to do in it and saying this is this is not viable, this is not viable, this is not viable. So then nobody tries it, and I know it because again, I was the same way. I used to make fun of the crowdfunder because of how bad it was. And then I tried it. I joined the Blisking 2 Discord, and it was actually literally Europe who told me, like, hey, crowdfunding is actually insane. Go test it yourself. And I was like, there's no way. So I did it. And then here I am, it being my favorite equipment by far. It being
Yeah.
my freaking sub badge on Twitch. Like, it's a good thing, and it's so fun to use. And I was robbing myself of that experience because I was listening to Woolie. So it makes me upset because like Nade's my favorite ability in the game, and now so many players are just gonna ignore them. They're not even gonna bother unlocking them because they're bad. Like
Yeah.
Nade's the reason I play Commando.
Yeah, and I think that's like the main takeaway. The thing that I always say is like it's a video game, you can like what you like, but like
Mhm.
please don't call things bad. Like nades are not bad. You can hate nades all you want. You can think they're not fun or unwieldy or hard to use. That's fine. But they're not bad. They don't
They're
suck, right?
not.
There's a difference between this thing sucks and I don't like or I don't understand how to optimally use this thing.
Yeah, and like another thing is like Squid Polyp is my favorite item in the game. Squid Polyp has insane aggro pool. It's got 20 base damage, and it just does a lot of damage. But because it doesn't buff the player, people think it's bad. When
Yeah.
in reality, Squid Polyp is putting in a lot more work than you think it is, just because you're ignoring it. It's same with Empathy Cores. Like Empathy Core is my favorite boss item. It doesn't buff the player. It's no Shatter Spleen. It's no Charge Perforator. But Empathy Cores does a lot of damage, and it pulls aggro. Like these things are more utility than just straight up damage ups. But that's what I like. That's why I like them.
Yeah. More synergy, more unique.
Yeah, they're more unique. And Woolie says Squid Polyp bad, or Woolie says Empathy Core's bad because they don't buff the player. So many people will agree. They're like scrap their Squid Polyps and not have this, and they won't have a elite brass contraption completely ignore them on stage 5 and they'll die.
Yeah.
It's just there's a reason why Woolie took so long to get 10 Mythic skills in a row. Where there's people in my Discord, in the lab Discord, who have not lost a Monsoon Run forever. It's like
Yeah. Consistency is key.
Consistency is key, and Woolie, if you're watching this, I'm not mad at you. I just wish you had reached out because we already had all this information, and I'm glad you did test the M1 thing. But just please, just stop calling us out. Stop calling us stupid when you're doing the exact same thing that we are doing. If this video is just what we do, please stop calling us stupid.
Yeah, we have a lot of bodies that spend hours doing this exact same thing, and we're willing to admit that we missed the M1. We never actually like timed it frame by frame, but all the rest of it, like the suppressive fire and grenades, like all that stuff, we've got the nail gun and the huntress. We already knew all of that. That stuff we did try. It was a
Yeah.
mistake that we didn't try Commando's M1 after the update, right? But that doesn't mean that everything else is now bunk. That everything else is now garbage. We've got a lot of very high experienced players that do exactly what happened in this video for fun all the time. We've got combined hundreds of hours on this same process.
Yeah. It's like 10 basically in this video, so we're not rambling for another 30 minutes because this video is already 50 minutes long.
Oh, we don't want to corrupt it again.
Yeah, we don't want to corrupt it again. Test things. Test things. Test things. If you think something is wrong, test it, like what Woolie did in this video.
Just
We were wrong.
emulate the scientific community. Read the research, read the other answers, read the hypotheses, and then if you want to peer review it, go for it. Test it again. You already know what the conclusion is, so it's so much. You don't have to do all the groundwork. You don't have to do all the structure. You can just test the conclusion.
Exactly. So yeah, that's gonna be it. I just, dang, I really wish you still had my right reaction to him saying they'd suck.
I know.
So yeah,
we got this one.
in conclusion, this is a much better video than what Woolie usually does, and I'm actually very proud of them for actually taking the. I assume he used the debug toolkit, which again, Woolie, if you're watching this next time, spawn_AI Lunar G181 for a completely AI-less enemy that has really high health and no armor. Like that's his name is Carl, and he's my good friend. Just use that. And I'm happy. I'm happy that you actually tested things. I'm glad that happened. Thank you. All right, Charlie, you want to say goodbye?
Yeah. I think I've already said all my closing thoughts. So this was fun. I'm really glad as well that there's a lot more testing going on. This is what we do. It's really good to see. I think ending with I don't knows is a little bit worse than like reaching out and ending with answers, but it's a step in the right direction, and I'm happy for that.
Yeah. All right. My name is Striker Tassa. Twitch channel and Lab Discord links are in the description. Raindrops coming soon. I've just been very demotivated to actually work on it. I will see you gamers later. Y'all have a good one.